Okay, so this one is going to be a ironic kind of funny one. Because this whole idea that you're being paid to think, not to code, the first time I actually stated that publicly was in the most awkward moment you can imagine. Every now and then, because I'm a bit of a cheeky person, I will drop these things that are very arrogant. Not because I'm like, very much this way, but just because it makes me laugh. The circumstances of the situation are kind of funny for me. And so a few years ago, in a job that doesn't need to be clarified more than that, a colleague of mine bumped into me as I was at the coffee machine for probably the nth time of the day. And that colleague was asking me, like, wow, you're still at the coffee machine again. What are you doing? When aren't you supposed to work? And my response on the spot, very instinctively, was, I'm not paid to code, I'm paid to think. But I dropped that little line, not knowing that the VP of the division was right next door, etc. I didn't get into trouble for this. And this was at a time before all of the AI stuff that is going on right now. But nevertheless, it was one of these moments where I dropped like one of these, golden nugget of truth that are still applicable today. Now, this reality is a thing that I've learned a long time ago. Is a thing that I had learned when I was working on my own company, that it was a necessary thing for you to do, because precisely, I had wasted a lot of time spending so much recoding something, because it takes time to code stuff. And I mean months of porting, fixing stuff, refactoring code, etc. Things that are necessary to do, things that engineers really are all actively trying to avoid. And that was not the part where you actually create value. That was the forced function that you have to go through to get to the part that is actually creating value, which is ultimately why you get paid. You get paid to create value. And you as a human, you do not create value when you code. You create value when you're actually thinking, when you create the stuff that has to be implemented, when you create the idea, when you think about the stuff. The same applies to pretty much every job, but it is true that, a lot of people would love to be in a position where they can just think and have someone else doing the execution. And in an absence of a magical tool like AI, you got to do the execution. There's also an element of truth, which is like, if you do not know how the execution is being done, it's very, very hard for you to do the thinking process and the decision-making process, et cetera, et cetera. The same goes with absolutely everything, which this is a side note for probably another conversation, another video, is one of the most underappreciated truth about anything. It goes in manufacturing, it goes into trade jobs, it goes into everything like this. If you do not know how the job is done in the first place, you cannot be thinking correctly about how to decide something regarding the job, on how the job is going to be done. But back into our point, why I'm making this video today is because AI tools have changed in the beginning of this year. I've been paying attention to everything that's been going on since really the coming out of ChatGPT, and testing them, and every single time someone says, but this model is so wonderful, it's changing everything, blah 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 blah, I will go around, put it on my calendar, blocker, little spike, 2 hours, and then really test the boundaries of where I would like it to be. And it's been fundamentally disappointing up until today, up until January. Something changed, and it got, I don't want to say revolutionary. We're not at the AGI. I don't think we're going to go in the AGI, not in this decade. But it got to the point that it was actually a useful tool, and it changed the way we had to work. The same way object-oriented programming changed the way we program stuff. Something like this, a big one like this. But it's still just a tool. It's just such a one with a psychological impact that it's leaving a lot of people wondering what's the relationship with the tool you should have. And there's a lot of speculation out there, and you can take this video as my 2 cents on the topic. But fundamentally, I'm here to say this, that I think at this point, an engineer that doesn't have AI workflow is an engineer that's going to become obsolete. And very simply put, it's the same as if you had an engineer that was not using completion, an engineer that was not using Google, who has never opened Stack Overflow before, whatever the tool of the moment is, except these were very micro, minimum stuff in terms of productivity, things that could really be priced into your output. I think we're months away, if not maybe a year away, into having a complete reset of the expectations of output of engineers on a one order of magnitude minimum, because we're going to assume that they actually are not wasting their time typing the code. But they'll need to know how to actually do the things so they can validate and check what the AI has been doing. But that's going to be an accelerator of the speed that we're going to be seeing. That's only going to be possible for those who are capable of thinking rather than those who are capable of coding. And what that means as well is that if your job, your liking, your love is to actually TP-tab the code everywhere, unfortunately, I think you'll be replaced. And I mean, not necessarily you'll be fired, not necessarily you'll be pushed out, but I think it's only a matter of time before you're going to start having an exam where people are going to put you in front of a 10x problem and they're going to want you to solve it right there and then, right? And demonstrating that you have this understanding that, you know, this is the new tool that you have, etc. Knowing, and this is accepting all of the lack of perfection that the tool has, all the problems that it has going on. And this is also part of what I'm trying to say is that when they go in loops, when they go into feeding you information based off outdated information, all of this handling is there because at the end of the day, what it has done that is irrevocable is provided a faster way of coding things. And I'm saying this with this gravitas in it because I code fast. I code very, very fast. And it's just impossible to code this fast for any human. It's the equivalent between, you know, an Olympian sprinter and a car. Right? This is really what it is. So you as an engineer, if you're just a coder, if this is really what you like to do, no one's sprinting to get the groceries anymore. The car is here. The car is to stay. People are going to continue using it, right? I think there's going to be a lot of correction, a lot of problems, etc. But watch my video about the precedent if you want to understand how I'm approaching this thing, because this is a precedent that is not, you know, leaving anywhere. And what was true before about the fact that you weren't paid to code, you weren't paid to spend that time coding, you were paid to the critical thinking, to the creativity of it, to get it right. Then you had to code it. So you're going to code it, and we're going to put the bandwidth behind it, etc., etc. We wanted you to be code efficient into how you spend, because, you know, it was a matter of you know, time sending the features out and then the product out that mattered. But that was not what you were being paid to do. If you took twice as long to implement something, that was not a bonus. That was a negative. And so that's going to be even more true today with these AI stacks. Now, on a footnote on this, the overwhelming majority of very senior engineer that I speak to are saying that this is making coding fun again. And I have to admit that they are right. This is exactly how I feel. It is so much more fun right now to just code stuff this way. Because you don't want to be coding a form for the billionth time. You don't want to be coding a database access for the billionth time. You don't want to be coding a TLS stack for the billionth time. It's just, there's nothing interesting in it. It allows you to get into the next level. The second thing I was going to say is that I think we're going to be seeing with that level of technology and that refocus on the thinking, some good and some bad. Some good is that the glass ceiling that was above our head, which most people are really not aware of this. When I bring this up, most people are looking at me like, huh? What are you talking about? So I'm going to explain it this way. The software of the 90s, and if you're, you know, too young to remember, you know, I don't know, Wayback Machine something, Google it, used to be pretty nimble and simplistic, etc. And that's because the software stack that we had back then, they were pretty rough. You know, it was a lot of stuff was written in C, and if you've written in stuff in C, you know that it's very long to implement anything. So it was de facto preventing you from doing, you know, bigger software, bigger apps, bigger things, etc. Because then it was like a crazy machine of people to get this kind of project out of the door. And so there's different stuff came up, and as you know, the different framework and SDKs and languages, etc., have made it much faster to build more, and so we saw more coming out. I think this is going to be a net thing is going to happen here. a lot of the software is going to get a lot more complicated. Now, this is difficult for a lot of people to envision, but I think we really are at the infancy of the kinds of software product that we can actually be building. So I'm going to use it this way. If your reference of a large software code base is a million line of code, it just moved to 10 million. If it's 10 million, it moved to 100 million. And I know what I mean about 100 million, right? This is like, I worked on code bases that were 10 million lines. But this is what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen, and that's going to allow us to have a lot more capabilities into the software. Now, if you put your capabilities in having animations and weird stuff, that's on you. And that's going to take me back to the other part of what's going to happen. Everything that's going to happen here is going to be very analogous to what happened to Hollywood when everybody could basically have CGI for virtually free. All the movies started to have great visual effects, overwhelmingly. That didn't make the movie good. And actually, when people started to look back into the past, they were looking at movies that didn't have these visual effects and therefore didn't, I would say, would force the creatives of the movie to emphasize on the storytelling. And then you realize that, yeah, that's actually better. You'll see the exact same paradigm in video games. Right now, anything can be 3D made. Some of the best video games are 2D because the gameplay is really there. The fundamentals of what makes something good have never changed. And this isn't changing it anyway. Your ability to just piss 10 million lines of codes with 3 people doesn't make your product good. And that goes back to what I'm saying. Because you're not paid to code, you're paid to think. Your product manager is going to be mattering if they're capable of doing critical thinking, not massaging the different kinds of roadmap and everything like this. The strategic people are going to have to be thinking harder to make sure that they're capable of going in. There is going to be a SaaS apocalypse, for sure. And I'm seeing it right there on my own side. There's a lot of things that I would have to buy before that now I can just recode quickly. And this is because a lot of these products have been built. They are overwhelmingly are working like cable bundles, right? I want 3 features and I don't have the choice of the 3 features. So you're forcing me to overspend for this. So I'm in a hostage situation. I'm going to have to spend the money for like 90% of functionality I don't care because there's this like 10% that I do need. And so what I'm going to be able to do right now is just recode a little small tool for the 10 functions that I need. And then I'll come back to you when I actually need more that justifies the spend that you ask of me. But that's the same thing. That's the same thing. You paid to think, not paid to produce stuff. This stuff is going to take care of the producing. If you decide to drown people in cheap quantity, you won't work. If you are actually focusing on quality, which is the thinking is supposed to do, you will win. You should love this stuff. You should absolutely embrace all these different things. And whatever comes next, because what I'm saying right now was true before this, and it will be true after this. The last thing I want to be pointing out is that I think that in that environment of, commoditization of mass producible content, talking documents and code and whatever and stuff like this, I think we're going to be seeing a moment where those who are going to be winning are those who are going to be capable of finely tuning their connection with the end user and really being able to understand what they want and giving them what they want. And that's going to be requiring a lot of people, well, everyone, me included, to be good at letting go of the bad idea and doing it quick. The quicker you do it, the better. The easier you do it, the better. Now, none of these things are either quick or easy. But unfortunately, this is what I think is going to be one of the key defining factor on top of those who are actually doing the right thinking process of those who are going to be winning or losing in this new era. And if you're not jumping on this as an individual, if you don't have this moment of introspection from the individual contributor all the way to the executive of the importance of your creative problem solving and your creative thinking, and when you bring to the table, if you keep positioning yourself as someone who just hears to create and execute, these things are going to wipe you out. They're going to wipe you out. It's no more complicated. and you just got it. You know, you were lucky. There was no other choice before. But of course, it was something that was going to get replaced. It is such a pain in the ass to have to spend, you know, so much time, so much effort, so much manpower behind pedantic things. All of the future of the technology that we need to build, that I want to build in my own company, requires us to be able to build more, so much more tech. And unfortunately for us, this technology is going to be dramatically helping us, not just directly, but also in getting people to refocus into whatever the contribution really has to become. Yeah, that's it.